Now join palms. And repeat after me. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha. Keeping the palms joined. All right, good evening, everybody. Nice to see you all here. Thanks for showing up. This is one of those days where everything you thought was going to happen, the exact opposite happened. I'm not going to walk you through my day. It's really not that exciting. But everything that I thought was going to go one way literally went the other way. And it just was a reminder for me, the teaching I talk about quite a bit, which is to go beyond expectations, meaning that don't expect anything from anyone ever. So if you're here for the first time, that's all you ever need to know with this practice, and then you're okay. Don't expect anything from anyone ever, and then you're good. Because then regardless of how things turn out, you're just abiding with it and being present with it, and that's ultimately what this practice is about. And so as my day, kind of transpired from super early this morning to this moment, I'm not kidding, like everything that was supposed to be one way or I thought would be one way ended up the other way, the opposite. And it was kind of cool, especially for the things that I thought would go not well ended up going well. But then the flip side is the things that I thought would go well, you know what that means? They didn't go so well. So that's kind of life. I mean, in like just one day, I got to experience what our entire life is like, which is some days go well, some days they don't go so well. That Snickers commercial on there somewhere? I've watched way too much TV growing up, so I often have. I don't even share most of them, thankfully for all of you who are here. But through this entire hour, I have constant references to TV commercials and movies. So feel fortunate that I don't bless you with all of the madness that's in my head. Anyone here for the first time? If so, I'm sorry. A lot. What brings you here for the first time? Whoever wants to share. We're a bunch of hands. So.
New friends.
New friends? Right on. Looking for new friends, or new friends brought you?
New friends brought.
Well, let's hope after tonight they're still your friends. What else? First time here. Who wants to share what?
New friends, the community.
Yeah. Community, new friends. What else? What's that? That guy wrong. Bad choice. Glad you're here. Welcome. Anybody else want to share? First time here? Friend. All those friends, man. I don't know what it is. It's funny too, because when often people ask, like, how do I get, and often if they refer to like a family member or a loved one or something like that, they'll often say, like, how do I get so-and-so to meditate? It's like, you don't, right? Because if you go up to somebody and say, hey, you should really, especially with someone that like you know and love, or they know you and love you, or somewhere around there, if you go up to them and say, hey, you should really try meditation, what are you ultimately telling them? Right.
They need meditation.
They need meditation, right? And how many of us like hearing those things from those that we know and love? Not so much, right? So I, give credit to all you people who got friends to come here. That was really, really well done. But yeah, that meditation thing is not everybody's really willing to practice it and to look at it, because it creates a condition, which we're about to do in a few moments, where you're stuck with the one thing that causes you all the pain and misery and suffering in your life. And what do you think that is? Yourself. So on that wonderful note, we're going to sit with ourselves for a little bit. For those who are brand new, to those who are joining virtually, welcome. Glad you're here. Feel free to say hello on the chat box there somewhere on the screen. A couple things to tell you before we begin. Again, for those who are maybe sitting for the first time, nothing's going to happen to you. Right? You're not going to float away. You won't have any mystical, magical experiences. The mind that races all day long is not going to shut off. Don't judge your practice. Meaning, don't ask yourself, is this working or not working? Are you doing it right or wrong? We're just going to sit. We're going to breathe. You'll hear sounds inside, sounds outside. This is life. Life is filled with chaos. And this practice is learning to get quiet and still within all of the chaos. Posture, you want to be comfortable. If you are on a cushion, often it helps slide into the front third, pushing the stomach forward allows the back to straighten. If you're on a bench or chair, however you're seated, same thing, just trying to sit up straight if comfortable. Hands are on the knees or lap, whatever works for you. If you need to move, simply move. Movement doesn't make you a bad meditator, just means you need to move. And especially for those who are new, you're not trying to think nothing. Your mind will not go blank. It will not shut off. Your mind will continue to race as much, if not more, than it always does. I will say things periodically to remind you that you're lost in thought and bring you back to present moment. I'll guide us as we begin, and we'll settle into a little bit of silence. Starting with the eyes closed if comfortable, or slightly open. Mouth is open or closed, whatever's comfortable. We'll start with taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And eventually, settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. Noticing the mind as it wanders, jumping from thought to thought. Start with gently guiding the attention, focus to the stomach or chest. Breathing in, feel them rise. Breathing out, they fall. Simply continue this practice, observing sensation of breath. As the mind wanders, lost in thought, recognize it. Release that thought. Return attention, focus to the breath. Where's your mind? Lost in thought? Return to breath. letting go of expectations, letting go of judgments from the practice, just sitting, breathing. Learning to be comfortable in stillness, in quiet, just sitting, breathing. body still, rested, and the speech quiet, aware of all sounds, and the mind learning to settle. Know what it's like to just sit and breathe. Knowing with each breath, there's nothing else to do. Nowhere else to go. And no one else to be. Everything beautiful, exactly as it is. Sitting, breathing. Once again, taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. As you slowly open the eyes, slowly beginning to move. And most important, with the practice of meditation, is to recognize how you feel now, immediately after. Compare this to how you typically feel throughout your day. Recognize the difference, if there is one. Ask yourselves how you prefer to feel every day for the rest of your life. Realize however you feel now, if it's quiet, calm, and still, or a busy mind, racing mind, whatever you're sitting with at this moment, has nothing to do with anything I said. It's nothing to do with how we sit, hold the hands across the legs. It's nothing to do with the sounds around us, or anything else for that matter. It's everything to do with your own mind and your own mind's reaction to an external condition. This is what the Buddha called pratitya samuppada, means dependent origination. This is the basis of the Buddha's awakening. The word Buddha simply means awakening. He was a human being, no different than any one of us, who began to understand why he suffered, why he got angry, sad, depressed, stressed, anxious. He began to understand the causal relationship of all phenomena. What that means, very simply, for all of us, regardless of where you come from, or what you believe in, or where you think you're going, your whole life is filled with things that happen. you react. More stuff happens, more reactions. That's it. This practice is simply learning what it's like to respond to something quietly, peacefully, still. Because for most of us, the way you responded to the last 20 minutes is quite different from how you respond to every other 20-minute period of your life. And so all we're working on is closing the gap to where the way you feel now is closer to how you feel always. Just as driven, motivated, productive, successful, whatever that means to you in your respective lives. But with a mind that's steady, clear, focused, distracted by nothing, disturbed by no one. Imagine going a day without being disturbed by someone. Imagine going an hour without being disturbed by someone. Most of you won't even make it home or wherever you're going before you're disturbed. Maybe not even out of the building. Meditation is free. Buddhist practice is free. It's sitting, breathing, learning to be kind to yourself and everybody else you encounter every moment of your life. And that's it. It never changes. It doesn't get more advanced than that. It doesn't get more complicated than that. It is the day-to-day, moment-to-moment practice and awareness of every single thing you think, every single thing you say, and every single thing you do. That's it. That's hard enough. The Buddha taught very clearly that we suffer, we experience dukkha, discomfort, angst, dissatisfaction because of our levels of greed, anger, and ignorance. And so we practice overcoming greed with generosity, anger with compassion, and ignorance with wisdom. That's it. I don't know about you, but I have enough greed, anger, ignorance in me to last the rest of this lifetime. So that's all I have to work on. That's hard enough. But before you even begin to work on it, we have to become aware of it. Where's the greed? Where's the anger? And where's the ignorance? Where is that arising in you? What experiences do we go throughout the day, have throughout the day, or go through that trigger greed, anger, ignorance? And how do we make changes within those experiences so they don't continue to occur? But if we don't ever stop, if we don't ever slow down, if we don't ever sit, breathe, we don't ever create space to actually watch what the mind does, then we'll just continue the way we are. One of my favorite quotes years ago, somebody in prison said, "Nothing changes if nothing changes." So if you want your heart, your mind, your emotions to change, then you gotta change. Can't just show up places. You gotta change. So with that, I'll pause. For me, I really just prefer to respond to questions. Meditation, Buddhist practice, anything that's on your mind. And again, to those who are joining virtually, glad you're here. Thanks for showing up. Feel free to say hello, or if you have any questions, you can put them in the chat box. And we'll use the rest of our brief time this evening for questions. So I'll open up to questions around meditation or Buddhism or whatever you're sitting with. We'll go from there.
I think so much of the anger that I feel, and this gets asked, I've been here a couple months, this gets asked, I've asked this in different ways, is like on behalf of others, because like my life is awesome, frankly. But watching, recently seeing a friend of mine lose a loved one in a senseless, tragic way, and watching what he's going through and knowing, one, that I am, I'm subject to that. There's no reason that one of my loved ones couldn't go get in a car accident right now. And also just not knowing what to do with that, both for me personally, knowing, I'm there to love him and support him, but, I'm still just,
Yeah.
I don't know how to put this into a helpful context.
No, I think that was perfect. I appreciate you sharing that, and you're right. It is. You've brought it up a few times, which is great. You could bring that up every week for the next 12 years, and you're still great, and you're still going to struggle with it. So let's just start there, right? It's not like after 4 weeks of me saying the same thing 4 different ways, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, that's the trick, right? But for those who didn't hear it, and just to rephrase the kind of the comment, really it wasn't even necessarily a question, but what to do, to paraphrase your words, that, your life is pretty darn good and you're okay, but your anger is really about other things that are happening in the world, more specifically, a friend who lost a loved one. And what do we do with that? Is that a fair?
Sure,
Yeah.
yeah.
So the first thing I want to just to clarify for anyone who's maybe not heard this before, and just as a reminder, there's a difference in anger and hurt or sadness or feeling pain. Moving beyond anger, again, I just want to put this into context for everybody, doesn't mean that when your dear friend loses a loved one, moving beyond anger doesn't mean you're like, oh, cool. No, it hurts. It sucks. But the emotion of anger can destroy you and doesn't bring any joy to anyone. And one of the responses I know I shared with you in the past was, one of the best things you can do is to be there for your friend, to love them, care for them, and be there to support them. And if you're filled with anger and rage, right? I think it was a similar night when the guy asked the question about his son who was going in for the heart surgery, right? And the question was around, how do we deal with that fear? It was like, well, your son, who was a teenager, doesn't need your fear. They need your love and support and strength right there. So same thing with that emotion of the anger, first to understand, is not doing you any good. Right? There's a lot of Buddhist metaphors out there. I'm bad at all of them, but there's one that says is something around like anger is like a hot coal and you're holding it. Meaning what? You're the one who's getting burned. The other people don't feel your anger. The people that you may, in whatever situation, right? All of us have some sort of anger, probably, I'm guessing, towards someone or something in our lives. And how many of you have been holding on to that anger for 10 years, 20 years, 50 years, a long time? That person doesn't even think about you anymore. And yet for 30 years, you're still angry. I make stuff up all the time, so you can make those numbers match whatever you want. So the anger doesn't serve anyone. But it doesn't mean that that feeling of anger isn't going to arise. But is the feeling, explore that feeling. Is it anger? Is it sadness? Is it grief? Is it, what is it really? Disappointment, frustration? Anger is a really strong thing to me that aligns very close with hatred. When we act on anger and hatred, which God knows I know very well for a majority of my life, we bring so much pain to ourselves and others. And in a situation like you're describing, you don't want to bring more pain to it. You want to bring love and healing and compassion towards it. And with the acts of compassion, maybe it'll help. Right? I mean, it's a longer story that I may or may not tell right now, I'm not sure, but I don't know if you've heard me tell the story of Azim Kamiza, who forgave, so you've heard that, he forgave the boy who murdered his son. I worked with him closely for 2.5 years. It's one of the most intense stories I've ever known. Tariq Kamiza Foundation, TKF. His son was murdered by a 14-year-old gang member. And he chose to forgive him because he knew if he didn't, he couldn't live. And now he works with him after Tony Hicks, 14-year-old, served 25 years in prison. And he fought every year to get him out because he realized that that kid was suffering. That's why he did what he did. Now, this is an extreme level of compassion that is very rare. So I'm not using that as like a bar that you should aim for. Just maybe try to work on the anger and hatred that you're carrying and see if it can transform into maybe some sadness, some grief, some frustration, some disappointment. and see where you can pour compassion into it. Yeah. But ask again next week and I'll give you a completely different answer. Yeah. What else? Yeah, we'll go there and then there. Go ahead.
How would you recommend balancing like letting go of anger and accepting things as they are with like standing up for yourself?
Sure. So the question is, if I heard it correctly, how would I balance letting go of anger and kind of stepping up for yourself as well, right? Or letting go of anger and accepting things versus standing up for yourself, yeah? So I talk about this all the time as well, because it's really the follow-up question to that. Is Buddhist practice is not about being a doormat, right? Whatever you believe in, fight for that. I see Buddhist practice as a very aggressive practice, but an aggressive practice of compassion, of love, of wisdom, not an aggressive practice of anger and hatred and disrespect. It's very rebellious to do nothing but loving, kind things to people all day long. Right? Now, I say this as well, always, safety first and foremost. Many people in this room, many people that know people, many of you who know people, any sort of domestic violence, physical, sexual, emotional, trauma, abuse, remove yourself from those situations. It's not Buddhist to just stand there when somebody's punching you. Right? The wisest thing is to remove yourself from situations of harm. So there is a balance there. And you have to ask yourself, am I in danger? Am I safe? Always speak up for yourself. To me, the Buddha and the great Buddhist teachers over the last 2,000 years were pretty strong rebels. They weren't just quiet people who backed down. They rebelled against mainstream society. But what happens is the average Western person sees images of monks under a tree and thinks that these people just do nothing all day long and escape from the world. They're not escaping. They're dealing with their shit so they can deal with other people's. Does that make sense? Yeah. In most situations that are filled with anger, the last thing that situation needs is more anger. You ever been angry? And when you are angry, if someone brings anger at you, does that usually help? His head went this way for those of you who didn't see. So a lot of times when we're not sure what to do, we just have to ask ourselves, what do we need in that situation? And to me, this is the wisdom of every situation, is to apply what might be best in this situation. We're not always going to be right. But when we're angry, we don't need more anger. We need love and compassion. Same towards others. Yeah.
Of the practices that a lot of practices we've talked about, one of them I'm most challenged by is not kindness per se. I think I do a decent job of being kind, but I'm kind to people I don't like. I guess I don't want to say that because that goes against where I want to be. But there are people who frustrate and I feel bad. I judge, and I know I shouldn't. So I'm just wondering.
You judge people?
But that's an important part of the practice, right?
Judgment?
No, the opposite.
The
opposite.
Yeah.
Loving compassion and loving kindness. I just don't know how to do better. I hate to say it's a reflex.
Understood. Let me just clarify the first part of your question so I heard you correctly. Are you saying that you are kind towards people you dislike?
Yes, I think a lot of us are. But
I'm not worried about anyone else. You're asking the question. But I'm trying to understand that. So you're kind to people you dislike, but mean to people you like? I'm trying to just...
No, I'm sorry. I'm outwardly kind to most people. I don't have a lot of fights or anything.
Okay.
I just don't necessarily mean all my kindness towards the people that I have judged or that I'm frustrated by or that I don't respect.
Okay, so now we're starting to get to more of a question, which what I'm hearing there you say is the real practice, ultimately, from what I just heard you say, is to work on not about whether you're kind or not kind. It sounds like you've got the kindness part down. The practice is on the way you're judging and critiquing everybody else. Anyone in this room judge anyone else? Okay, so surprise, you're not the only one, right? Try to practice well, let me put it this way. You ever done anything that harmed people? I'm sure. Remember that, like 1987, that one day that you harmed someone, right? We've all done it. And if people judged us on the one thing that we did to cause harm, or the multiple things we did to cause harm, is that really fair? Like, would you want to be judged by the 2 things you did that caused harm in your entire life? How would you feel? Like, express, put into words. Let's just say, you've done 10 things in your life that harmed people and 1,000,000 things that have been great. How would you feel if everyone judged you based on just those 10 things?
Ashamed. You get let down the world.
Ashamed and like you've let down the world.
And my, what does that mean about me?
Stick to the, okay, I appreciate you sharing that. But my point is, you would feel ashamed as if you've let down the world. Why would you put that on somebody else? To me, this practice is a mirror. And anytime we deal with things like with anger towards others, to the question in the back, to something like this, I've found the most beautiful practice has been to use these teachings as a mirror and say, why would I judge anyone when I look at everything I've done? I wouldn't want to be judged by the stuff over here that I've done that caused harm. Nor should I be judged by the stuff over here that hasn't caused harm. Why should anyone judge me at all? Nobody knows me. Nobody knows you. You're just a person. You're a human who's done good things, as we call them, and bad things, as we call them. You've caused harm and you've brought tremendous joy to people's lives. We don't like to be judged. So the question shouldn't be, as my master always said, don't look for answers, change the question. To me, the question isn't how you're treating the people that you dislike. The question is, how can you get to a place, truly in practice, to where you're not disliking people? I'm not saying you got to make everybody your best friend and hang out with them and have tea all day long. But every person is suffering. Every person is living a life that you know nothing about. And yet we walk around all day long judging and critiquing everybody else based on like a tiny little snapshot. These days we base it on a social media post. And then we form our judgments and opinions on who they are. Absolute strangers. And then we spend all day long defending those opinions, telling everyone else about those opinions. Life is rough. It's rough. And most people have the hardest time, or the hardest thing for most people, who are they judging most often? Themselves. Right? What's that expression? We're often our own worst enemy or our own worst critic or something like that. So we're doing enough judgment of ourselves. I suggest dropping that also, but baby steps. Yeah.
This has to do with habits. I think it was you who was talking about how at the monastery, like everything becomes habitual, and it's kind of something I'm trying to create in my life.
Oh.
that there's not a lot of thinking involved? Like, what's the point of doing that, or can you expand on how those things are implemented, let's say in a monastery context?
Sure. So let me just kind of respond to that with a bit of a question just to clarify. Are you looking to create healthier habits in your, because I heard two pieces to what you shared. Possibly, this is what I want to clarify, are you looking at how to create healthy habits in your life? Or is the question more about what is the intention and purpose of doing things where you're not thinking at all? The second one. Oh, so you don't want to create healthy habits in your life?
I feel like I already know what healthy means to me,
Yeah.
so I don't need help with figuring it out.
Oh, I'm not going to tell you what's healthy for you,
Okay.
but I'm not even going there. Yeah, I'm not going to tell you what's healthy for you ever, right? I'm just going to suggest what I think the Buddha taught about this kind of stuff.
Expand on whatever.
Yeah, okay. I'm glad you got the healthy habit part down. That's a good practice. But the idea of, as Dogen called it, beyond thinking, right? Zen Master Dogen, he was the founder of the Soto Zen school, lived from 1200 to 1253, and it's got a great text book. It's called Beyond Thinking. And the practice is that when the body and mind fall away, you're left in abiding in cessation of breath. And so, yes, I do talk a lot about doing things that were just repetitive in nature, where you're not thinking and you're just doing them, right? And whether it's brushing your teeth, okay, whether it's the way you would put a robe on, whether it's the way you would do prostrations, whether it's the way you would drink tea, eat a sandwich, whatever it is, can we just be fully present with things? Because ultimately, to me, any question, behind every question is, well, why? What is the purpose? And I think that's what you're asking. What's the point of all of this? Beyond all of your healthy habits, do you ever get angry and sad and depressed and feel miserable? And where's that coming from?
For me, it's like active rebellion of the habits.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to do that.
Okay, you're thinking too much, so
Yeah.
this is great. What I'm saying is, where's your anger and sadness and depression coming from? Specifically, one place and one place only. Your mind, your thoughts. You sit around all day long thinking a lot about stuff. And when you do you ever think about good things, or do you think about all the things that are miserable? Most people don't sit around and think about all the good things. If they did, none of us would be here right now. We'd all be at home watching cartoons. But we sit around all day long thinking about, oh, this happened and that happened. We go through like 4 hours of thinking about miserable things in our lives, and then a little like 2-minute gap pops up, and we're like, oh, there's something happy. And then there goes another 3 hours of miserable stuff. The practice is to go beyond the thinking about everything and actually experiencing life. So we don't just sit there thinking about all the pain and misery, right? There's a Zen expression that says, if hungry, eat, if tired, sleep. But if we're hungry, we gotta like look on Instagram, get an idea of what to make, ask 18 people if we should make it, eat it, talk about it, tell everyone about it. It's like we've done 17 things before we've just taken a bite of food. The practice is to simplify things. If we simplify things, we're not wrapped up in our heads so much. But we just complicate. I shouldn't say we. I, as a practitioner, complicate things. So the practice is to simplify. If I'm hungry, I'm just going to eat. If I'm tired, I'm just going to sleep. You don't need to think so much. Thinking doesn't usually lead to good things. And I'm not suggesting that you stop trying to solve all of the world's problems, continue on your search, right? But every once in a while, just see how much time you actually spend thinking versus how much time are you actually present and focused on what you're doing. Does that help?
Mm-hmm.
In the back, and then we'll go here. Yeah, go ahead.
So this question is in regards to patience and specifically relating to time. So having patience to be on time or always in a rush to be on time. How does time relate to this?
Just leave earlier. So just to paraphrase your question, you said your question is about patience and having to do with time, and always being in a rush to be on time, I'm still not sure what any of that has to do with patience, right? And if you are always in a rush to get to places on time, then leave earlier. When hungry, eat. When tired, sleep. When late, leave earlier. I'm sure the Zen masters added that one somewhere as well.
What about the anger that arises from being late?
Don't be late and you won't be angry.
She's talking about me.
I know what she's talking about. You guys have been doing this for years. Every question you guys ask is about each other. Come on, and you're still. But what I love about you is after all these years, you're still here. You're still showing up. You even had a baby, and you're still showing up, right? The baby is with someone right now, right? It's your date night. Look at that. This is date night. Oh man, that's one of the most beautiful things I've heard in here. And what? And you rushed to get to date night because you were late and there was no patience. Now it's all making sense. Love and compassion towards each other. Some people are just always late, and some people are just always early. Do not expect anyone to be anything other than who they are. And when you already know who they are, definitely don't expect them to be different.
That was really good.
Thanks.
So I don't even know how to phrase this question. So how do you, I think I have multiple questions in one question.
Yeah.
When anger arises and you're no longer aware and I'm more reactive and I react with anger. So how do you have any tips to ground myself again to, instead of spitting more anger,
Yeah.
Bring compassion? Because I find it extremely difficult, especially if anger is being thrown at me, even though I know it's unintentional. I'm talking about a teen,
Those damn teens.
Yeah. I know my reaction should not be countering back with anger,
Yeah.
but I find it very difficult to counter back with compassion.
Yeah. You have a pretty bad temper, don't you?
It can be.
Yeah.
I've worked a lot on it. It's much better, but I realize now.
Or I should have said you've had, sorry.
No, that's okay.
Yeah.
That a lot of things are resurfacing. And I guess that leads to my second question. It's how do you kind of end that core wound so it doesn't continue, especially like trying to break the patterns and
Sure. So the question, just for those who maybe didn't hear it, is there's a couple levels of this. First is around when the anger arises and you've already just kind of, you're not even in awareness mode, you're already in response mode.
Yeah.
And you want to know what are tips that you can maybe do to pull yourself out of that anger response mode. And then also the kind of the second part to this, or the add-on to this, is when you find yourself in that situation and someone is, saying or doing things towards you, whatever that's triggering you and causing you the anger, how do you throw compassion back to them to kind of break the cycle?
And to myself.
And to yourself, yeah. Yeah, so simple, right? Like, let me just give you the answer and you'll be cured. So there's a couple things. One, there's an acronym I like to share probably about once a month that I've found for many people to be very helpful. And there are a couple tips and tricks you can use. This is one of them. It's sober. Have you heard anyone say this before? So the letters are sober, right? Stop, observe, breathe, expand, respond. Now, this all, I'm going to walk through them briefly, and it all happens very quickly. But this is one thing you can do when you're in that moment. You're like, oh, there's anger, awareness, but the awareness is like, cool, angry, and then the punch happens, right? And now you're already in retaliation mode. Just stop. Whatever you're doing. Like if it's an argument, for example, just like you said with a teen maybe, and the teen's making you angry and then you're angry back, just stop. Like, I guess the S in this moment could also be just shh. I'm talking to myself because I can relate to this way too much, right? So just stop. Then observe. Observe in this example is really important because in this example, at least what I'm hearing from you, it sounds like, is it's a teen. Is it your teen? Okay, so this is someone you love.
Yeah.
Observe in this moment, wow, teen, angry, me, mom, angry, love, observe that. And it's super quick. I don't mean like 3 minutes. I mean like 3 seconds. Just quiet, observe, and then breathe. Take a few deep breaths. Now the teen, they may still be yelling at you. You know what's a miracle I found out? Is when someone yells at you, you don't have to yell back. Did you know that? It's really fascinating. It's not easy.
No.
Because they're pushing your buttons, they've triggered you, and but just breathe. Take some deep breaths. And in those deep breaths, you're focused on the deep breaths, which means if you're focused and taking deep breaths, you can't be doing what? Yelling. So breathe, and then expand, right? Expand to recognize that, look, your life, your teen's life, is much bigger than that one moment, that one argument, right? Whatever it is, it will pass. You'll get over it. There'll be another one tomorrow, right? So why make the whole world all about that one argument? Because very often we do that. And so if you've stopped, if you've observed the situation, if you take some breaths, if you expand to recognize that life is way bigger than just this one argument, then you begin to respond. And then hopefully in that process of like 5 seconds that you've done these things, 10 seconds, you can respond with a little more compassion, a little more kindness, a little more love. Because when your teen is yelling at you, and I usually don't make it personal like this, but when the teen is yelling at you and you're a mom, what do you want to try to be doing?
Correct them, teach them along the way, but
Right.
also yelling back at them with the teaching, which
Yeah,
helps.
yeah. So it's you want to try to model for them
Yes.
some sort of healthy conflict resolution, healthy dialogue. And while yelling might feel good for us to get stuff out, usually when two people are yelling at each other, there's not much resolved. And it's all emotional. So, another thing I think, a wise choice could also be, hey, this isn't the best time for us to speak about this. Maybe we should both, like a boxing match, we should both take 3 minutes and go step into our own corner. And then when we both have calmed down and we can speak about this in a calm manner, then we can come back together. But you're going to have to set that example.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, it's still back to you.
That's okay.
Yeah.
I can
Is that,
do
I don't know if that helps at all,
No,
but
super helpful.
yeah.
Super helpful.
you can try that.
Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. What else? Yeah.
Should I just be viewing all suffering as the same thing? When I think about this, I think about the person talking about habits, trying to change habits, trying to get better at something. Habit is to not be doing whatever it is. If I don't do it, I'm suffering because I want to be able to do it. And if I do it, I'm suffering this sort of exhausted kind of feeling of like, I just want to stop and slow down a little bit.
Yeah.
Is it all the same? Or
Yeah.
think about that?
Yeah, it's all the same. I mean, so your question, just for those maybe virtually or anyone who didn't hear it, you're asking, is suffering all the same? Meaning, if you're trying to create good habits and you stop yourself from doing something, then you're suffering because you're not doing it. But if you do it, then you're suffering because you're doing it, right? So you're suffering either way, yes. But I don't know if the Buddha actually said that. Actually, I don't know if the Buddha said anything, but one of the things you've heard me say is the Buddha talks about healthy cravings, healthy desires. Yeah. So the desire to suffer less, right? The craving to be kinder, compassionate, gentler people. These are healthy cravings, healthy desires. What I was going to say is, I don't know if he said that there's healthy sufferings, but that's what was going through my mind when you were asking that was there's an intention to do something or not do something. And the intention to not do whatever the bad habit, the habit is that you want to stop. The intention is it's not healthy for you or others or whatever the situation may be. And so you're suffering because of that. But the intention is to create ultimately less suffering. So in order to create that healthy habit, you have to create a new habit, which is breaking an old habit, and both cause suffering. So choose the healthier suffering, the long-term path. And if you are going to suffer anyways, both ways, then right, you might as well suffer in the one that ultimately is going to be good for you and that you're going to try to break through. But I'll tell you what, man, and you know it, breaking any sort of, for those who battle addiction, anything like that, breaking through craving and desire and habits and habitual patterns and behaviors is not easy. And it takes a daily practice, right? Still one of my favorite books I ever read 20-something years ago, Stephen Covey wrote 7 Habits of Highly Successful People. And one of the things he talked about was saying it created 21 days to create a habit. I don't know if that's true or not, but if you can try something for 21 days, I think that's a good start. So,
And I feel just tired and exhausted all the time, I just sleep.
yeah,
And that's
when hungry, eat, when tired, sleep. The alternative is the unhealthy behavior. Tired and exhausted, unhealthy habits. I don't know about you, but I vote for tired and exhausted. Because the not tired, not exhausted, unhealthy habit, in many cases, will kill you. One way or the other, literally or metaphorically. And if you're asking a question about this, then it's, it's probably not the habit of like drinking soda. Just guessing. So, anything else before we close? Yeah.
What does Buddhism say about intuition?
Mm.
I feel like intuition is like a sixth sense that we all have.
Yeah.
Some of us are better tapping into it than others, but that's something that I really want to be better at. It's like reading my own inner wisdom, which is basically intuition.
Yeah. So the question around, and I'll close with this thought, the question around what does Buddhism say about intuition and, kind of tapping into that. And you said you feel like for you, it's almost like a sixth sense. What's that all about? And so in Buddhism, there's what's called bodhicitta, Buddha nature. And as I almost always say, the Buddha was no different than we are. Human, woke up every day, ate every day, went to sleep every day, went to the bathroom every day, just like us. He was just some dude who figured out how to end his suffering. What that means is when we take refuge in the Buddha, what we're taking refuge in is not the Buddha himself, because he died, he can't help you, he's gone, right? But we're taking refuge, finding safety, comfort, protection in what is known as bodhicitta, Buddha nature. And the teaching is that, as the Buddha said, we are all already awakened. So, the metaphor that I've always loved around Buddha nature, I don't know if you've heard me share this or not, but it's the sun, right? So when the sun is there and it's a cloudy day, do you see the sun? No. Why? The clouds, right? We're short on time, so I'll simplify it, right? The clouds are there. And as the clouds part, the clouds are greed, anger, ignorance. In Buddhism, we call this the 3 poisons. This is what causes our suffering: greed, anger, ignorance, craving, desire, etc. So as the clouds part, we then see the sun again. So that, what you're referring to as intuition, inner wisdom, whatever that might be, that Buddha nature, that awakened being is already there. It's not in some book. It's not in some temple. It's not in someone else talking to you. You already have it. So you don't need to go anywhere, right? The challenge is, I'm definitely not going to doubt your Buddha nature, right? But the challenge is for all of us is to recognize, right? Have you ever had an idea and thought, this is a really good idea, this is super wise, and it was actually really dumb, right? I have a lot. So that's what we want to and I'm just throwing this out there for all of us. We want to be kind of cautious that our intuition doesn't always mean it's the wisest, most beneficial thing. But it also doesn't mean we should ignore it. And I like what the Buddha said about the teachings. He said very clearly, don't believe these teachings just because he's saying them. Try them. Put them into your life. And if they work, great. If not, abandon them. And I think with intuition, that kind of sense can be very similar, that if you have an intuition and you follow it and it brings love and kindness and compassion to yourself and those around you, then great. If your intuition brought pain and suffering, then you're like, oh, okay, maybe I was wrong. And be willing to honestly answer that question, you know? So, hope that helps. All right, so we'll close on that. We'll join palms. May the benefit of this practice be shared with all beings in all directions. May all beings be at peace. May all be free from suffering. May any merit gained from this practice be transferred to those who need it most. All right, just a few quick announcements before you all head out. Thanks for being here. My name is Jeff. I'm a Dharma Bum. We opened up this temple 17 years ago to introduce Buddhist practice to those who show up. Those of us who lead, we're not monks, we're not nuns, we're not gurus, we're not masters, we're not teachers, we're not looking for students. We're just practitioners. We do our best to take our understanding of Buddhist teachings and put it into terms that hopefully make sense to those who show up. So every night, different unenlightened folks leading their own Buddhist practice with those who show up. Every Thursday, now at 4:30, we move the time up. We do a food redistribution program. I still think it's one of the best things around here. We prepare gourmet vegetarian meals, also known as peanut butter and jelly, and we feed people who sleep on the streets every night. So anytime you think your life sucks and you lack gratitude, feed people who sleep on a sidewalk, and it definitely will kind of put things into perspective for you. Other than that, this Saturday we actually have a really special guest coming. And he is the author of a book around Buddhism in America. And Scott Mitchell, who we connected almost a year ago now, but he's going to be here this Saturday at 11. So the normal intro to Buddhism at 11 o'clock, he'll be here for that. So stuff's on the website, but it'll be really cool to have him here. Otherwise, thanks for being here. Be well, be safe, and we'll see you soon.